So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Videoscape Europe and to the Broadcasters Digital Revenues panel, as we're colloquially calling this. We're delighted to have a fantastic panel of industry advisors, experts, gurus, and senior execs here to give us a sense of where the market is today and what the priorities are for broadcasters in this peculiar and profoundly troubling time as we plot a course forwards during the 2020s. My name's John Watts. I'm senior advisor and co-founder of a strategic consultancy called MTM. I've been working as an advisor in the USA and Europe for almost 25 years now, sadly, or delightfully, I should say. And this topic, broadcasters and the digital transformation of the industry, has been very much my focus for almost all of that time, I'm pleased to say. Anyway, you're not here to hear from me, you're here to hear from our fantastic panel. So let's dive straight in. Paula, do you want to introduce yourself and give us your sense, first of all, of what digital market are broadcasters really competing in, against who, for what, and how are they doing from a share point of view?
Hi, hello everyone. So thank you for having me. I'm Paola Colombo and I'm responsible for tech and business development. So the digital transformation of Publitalia, Mediaset sales house. Mediaset is the leading broadcaster for the Italian market and Spain. So that's a very interesting question. So broadcasters are competing on a lot of fronts nowadays. So specifically in digitals, of course, we are competing with other broadcasters, but mainly with, the OTTs, and we are competing for attention in a way, so for consumers' attention. So we speak about the OTTs, but also, all the big platforms like the Googles, the YouTubes, the Facebook that entertain and, take attention share of the users away. And gaming platforms could be one. TikTok is another rising star. And on a different front, we have also telcos, that are reinventing, re-engineering their own business. And they're growing across several products. So of course, it's a very busy landscape. It's a very successful landscape where we've been having a healthy business for several years, and now we have to adapt to the digital playfield, which is has slightly different rules.
But listening to you talk, it sounds like you're competing against multiple companies on multiple fronts.
And that's the case. That's the case, especially for us that we're having such a big piece of the market in Italy. So we're really the incumbents, and of course, like the Roman Empire, you have people attacking from several sides. But it's not only about defense. So we are trying to do is, of course, we are looking at what works in the market and what we could replicate in our OTT, in our SVOD platform, in other vertical products that we are building, maybe outside of the video space specifically. And we are working on data. So we take the best of the market and we are trying to drive our own way of development, while of course defending our core business of linear TV.
Well, it's the first time I've heard Mediaset compared to the Roman Empire, but I'm sure we will return. We will return to that metaphor later on. Bill, tell us a bit about who you are and give us your sense. What do broadcasters compete with today, and how are they doing at defending their share of the digital market?
Thank you, John, and welcome everybody to the panel. I'm Bill Gash. I'm sales director for Ascendon in Europe. Ascendon is one of a number of platforms and products that CSG provides. So tier one service providers and media brands. So that includes pay TV operators and telcos, and then Hollywood studios and broadcasters. All of those businesses are now competing for the attention, time, loyalty, and spending power of today's digital consumers. The world is intensely competitive, and a lot of our time is spent helping our clients recognize what are the real complex business problems that they're trying to solve. And we're providing solutions like Ascendon, which is a monetization platform, to help them be more effective in terms of how they engage those customers. Broadcasters specifically are discovering, I think it's a very exciting opportunity for these organizations, a whole new world of direct-to-consumer. In the past, they've perhaps become over-reliant on somebody else acting as a gatekeeper between them and the end customer. If they really want to be successful in the future, a core part of their strategy has to be B2C, and that means they're, for the first time, having to take responsibility for every dimension of that customer experience. That is new. That's requiring a lot of new knowledge, new systems, and it's quite a responsibility in a world where the expectation of what an experience is being should look like is being set by very powerful digital native brands. So I think our world is really helping our clients navigate that new terrain, providing solutions that help them move forward quickly and be more successful as they, for example, as a broadcaster, become a D2C business.
And how would you say broadcasters, are doing in defending their market share today? How has their share changed over the course of the last decade?
I think if you look at the metrics that broadcasters used to count and the ones they have to count now, that's an area of serious transformation. Only a couple of years ago, I remember being in a presentation from the head of programming for Sky and talking to the audience about you people are still counting overnights and barb data and those types of numbers in terms of audience. Whereas in Sky's world, as he put it, they were counting engagement and really tracking in minute detail to what extent consumers spent time with their products and services and content. And I think that's what broadcasters need to look at now. When they count share, they need to look and have a much more accurate definition of share of audience. We've seen obviously the metrics that they use to certainly sort of reflect value to advertisers struggle to keep up with catch-up viewing, with recorded viewing as well as live linear viewing. And that problem's just going to continue to evolve. But I think broadcasters are beholden to demonstrate evidence of engagement themselves with that sort of direct-to-consumer model, whether they're funding it through an advertising business model or a paid-for business model. But better data and deeper insight is the future for them.
Okay, and then last but not least, Stefan, give us your sense. When you're sitting there thinking about your competitive set, who are your competitors, and how have they impacted your digital market share over the last decade or so?
So, hi, thank you very much for having me. My name is Stefan Korubel. I'm CEO of RTL Ad Connect, the international ad sales house of RTL Group. A little bit like my colleagues here around the table, we have multiple competitors, from local competitors to global competitors, in many ways, from linear to non-linear on the VOD field, from SVOD to AVOD, the OTT, ATV. To be honest, this is a very, very complicated market we are fighting against. And lately, we've been fighting against a more fierce one. It's called COVID-19. And I can tell you, this is tough. So in any case, since it's a multiple competition and on multiple grounds, we have defined our strategy as total video. We don't think today as linear TV or online video on one side and in a silo effect. We think at RTL Group that consumers are accessing our content in whatever mode they want, in the way they want, the way they choose, when they like it. And we consider this as a total video world. So the battle for us is for the share of attention, for the connections with the consumers. That's the battle we are in. And when it comes to our share, well, I think we've been growing our digital share as a group over the last decade, as many other media group have done. But I think for us, if we just look at the beginning of the early days of COVID in April, we saw that the impact on linear TV was extremely important in terms of viewing time. Just to give you a few ideas, in the UK, we talked about plus 15% in viewing time. In France, plus 36% in viewing time at early days of April. In Italy, we were talking about plus 42% in linear TV viewing. And at the same time, when you look at digital, when you look at our own and operated platforms, again, if I take UK, plus 50% of uniques on ITV Hub, plus 44% on Sisplay. And again, in Italy, I will take Rai as an example, is plus 100% in terms of uniques at the early days of COVID. So what we see is a very general push and increase of consumption of video as a whole, whether it's linear, non-linear, whether it's on TV or traditional TV set, or on a PC or on a mobile. And definitely, this is something that we are raising. I took a few numbers from the latest quarterly results of RTL Group that I can give you. We've been increasing year on year of 34% our reach of subscribers on our VOD platforms, TV Now and Videoland, to reach 1.6 million nearly. And we're going to ramp up this until 5 or 6 million. That's the idea. That's our objective within the next few years. And at the same time, our streaming revenues grew as well of about 20%. So even in COVID time. So what we see, of course, there's a big challenge at the moment and a big pressure on TV or traditional TV. But on the other side, we see that there is a growing opportunity from a digital front. Of course, we're comparing pennies and dollars. That's a little bit the issue at the moment, but nevertheless, the trend is quite positive.
So that's really helpful, I think, to set the scene. Bill, I'm going to turn to you now to see if you would care to play Agent Provocateur, or perhaps Barbarian at the Gate of the RTL and Roman Empire.
Boss, absolutely, yes.
My lips are sealed. But do you think, in general, Europe's broadcasters should be happy with how they've responded to this huge uptick in competition during the course of the last decade? You've just heard Stefan and Paola set out some genuinely impressive numbers. Digital is clearly growing, but there's a lot of people are growing SVOD and AVOD revenues. The market is becoming, as you say, much more competitive. If you can talk in very general terms, should big commercial broadcasters be generally happy with how they've done, or actually should they be deeply nervous about the last 5 years and even more nervous about the next 5?
Well, clearly I could make a lot of friends or a lot of enemies by answering this question, so I'll be very careful. I think there's a good phrase, which is, we are where we are. In many organizations, you have relatively new management who perhaps inherited a situation that wasn't of their own making. I think we typically sit down with organizations that will occasionally put hands up and say, mea culpa, you were right, you came to see us 5 years ago, we should have listened to you then, but that's very rare. So we are typically helping organizations address the problems they've got now, rather than go back and jab and point fingers or help them sort of attribute blame in their own organization. The reality is broadcasters have had a successful business, and as Stefan quite pointed out, where you have a situation, very unusual situation, where people are confined to their own homes, desperate for ways to be entertained, inevitably their consumption of video goes up, whether that's live, watching live TV, particularly news at the present time, obviously not sports, for example, or on-demand entertainment and some recorded content. What happens after COVID goes away is going to be more interesting, and many of our clients are already at a point where they're saying, right, we've managed to sort ourselves out to run the business right now, but this isn't going to go on forever. It's the new abnormal, as we like to say. What is going to replace it? What will the future look like? So I think, to answer your question, let's not worry about the past. There are certainly certain broadcasters who perhaps could be accused of complacency, who perhaps didn't realize the threat that Netflix or Amazon posed, or even Disney Plus, when it launched Disney Life in the UK, posed some time ago. But they are where they are now. Our interest really is talking to organizations that are recognizing that at the core of their business, they're entertainment companies, not technology companies. That is quite a difficult thing for businesses to accept. It's quite difficult politically inside organizations which perhaps have felt more secure with the idea they can walk down the corridor and see their own IT department and run their from that side. Our proposition is focus on what you do best, creating or sourcing or commissioning or making great entertainment. Bring in the best partners you can find, who are the best companies, best of the best, if you like, in technology. Help them make your company successful in this era, and speed things up, speed your ability to innovate, launch new products, refine new services, introduce new offers to your consumer, engage them more deeply and build that loyalty that I described earlier, which is the real battleground, as Stefan pointed out. If you don't retain your customers, build that loyalty, you're just going to get smaller and smaller over time. And regardless of whether your business model is advertising or subscriptions, you're going to be trying to make money with a smaller business.
All right. Paula, so I think Bill has played more sage counselor than barbarian at the gate, but very, very briefly, just in a couple of sentences, if you were to give Europe's broadcasters very generally, marks out of 10, where 10 is exceptional and 1 is desperately needs to do better in terms of how they've dealt with digital over the last 5 years, what would your score be?
For me or for Bill?
No, generally, how would you rate Europe's broadcasters? Just give us a sense in terms of have Europe's broadcasters dealt incredibly well? Would you give them 10 out of 10? Couldn't have done better?
Never a 10. There's always room for improvement and motivation for improvement. No, but I would say it's a 6.5, let's say. Okay. So I think sometimes we haven't felt the urgency to do. So we always been in digital. Historically, we were one of the first to launch a digital OTT back in the days, and it worked. And it was always, oversold, and it was growing steadily. And then, we accepted that there were the digital players coming in, and we felt the pressure, but still, we never really realized that the change could happen really quickly. And then, we have sped up, and now it's definitely a priority and has been dealt as a priority in the past, 2-3 years for sure. But, I've seen a nice presentation from Teres Cavaja from Lumas Partners. And he has this amazing slide with a plane. And what he said is broadcasters have to switch their engines in flight. So it's a very difficult exercise because you're always wondering, am I growing my business, or am I cannibalizing myself? Am I moving to a battlefield where, I'm not as powerful as I was before? So it's very, very delicate, and you have to keep all these things in place. But I think now it's clear, we are going around and sitting in panels, or going around in conferences and having, conversation as Stefan, we have been EBX, partnership among broadcasters, that is key. Now everybody's focusing on digital. And again, to Stefan's point, it's not so much about digital anymore, it's about total video. And, quoting again, Bill, so you have to go back to what you do best. And what we do best, is finding and creating content for our consumers. And on the other side is we provide very effective advertising. And so it's just a matter of doing it with different tools.
I saw Terry's presentation, which I think is on YouTube and can still be watched, and it was great. And my only slight anxiety about his airplane metaphor was that I think the situation may be more akin to trying to add airplane wings to an oil tanker.
No, that was another.
That was a different one. Stefan, very quickly, in a couple of sentences, marks out of 10 for the last 5 years. How would you rate Europe's broadcasters in responding to the challenges we've been talking about, to this change in the competitive environment and the growth of digital?
Well, I think RTL Group has been has put some initiatives from the very, very beginning, I would say. So I would be a bit more, maybe, don't get me arrogant or maybe ambitious, I would say. I would quote it a 7 or 8, because from the beginning, the strategy was really clear about total video. It's been a few years now, to be very honest. We're not here either to be the direct competitor of Netflix or Amazon Prime. We don't have those big pockets, and we will not play that game. What we want is to play our game, and our game is orchestrated around 3 basic topics. It's really core, and core is content, generating our own content, very strong content, high qualitative content, premium content. The second is about growth, identifying the way to grow our business, and growing our businesses is to go on AVOD, is to go on SVOD, is to grow and to build our national streaming platform or streaming champions. It's not going on the field of Netflix. It's not to copycat Netflix. It's to grow our own national champions, with a different pricing, with a different offering, with a different positioning. And the third part is about alliances and partnerships. We believe and strongly believe that even if at RTL Group we are already a conglomerate or partners within Europe, we think that if we want to fight against the big ones, we need to build up alliances. We need to build up alliances in streaming. This is what we do, for instance, in France with Salto. And basically, we not only do that for a content perspective, partnering with TF1 and France Télévisions, so the public sector, to have a global TV offering, I would say. We're also partnering from the tech perspective. The back end, which is called Bedrock, is a joint partnership. It's a joint venture with all the different broadcasters that are taking a stake in this, including RTL Group. So we're not alone in this. On the advertising field, it's the same. RTL AdConnect is some kind of an international alliance. We're not only working with RTL Group companies, we're working with ITV, with RAI. We just launched a new VMP Connect that allows everyone to buy a programmatic campaign across 4 markets and soon very much more markets around Europe from a single DSP seat across, Antena 3, ITV, M6 and IPD in Germany. So again, we think that the future of broadcasting will go through alliances, and that's very important. We cannot do it on our own.
It's a really interesting point, and I'd love to come back and talk a bit about that in a moment.
Yeah.
Let's start just quickly by deep diving into AVOD and thinking about the advertising part of the puzzle. I'm going to start with Paola here, because I know obviously this is something you care deeply and passionately about. In your view, what does the roadmap ahead for AVOD services look like? My sense is that most broadcasters have rolled out, the last decade or more, very successful digital ad-funded products, which are widely available. They generally perform pretty well, and they've been scaling quite nicely. But the challenge I'd suggest over the next 5 years is to integrate these with linear VOD, so that we have one unified pool of inventory that really helps broadcasters grow share and achieve scale and continue to do what they do best. Do you agree?
Definitely. And actually, we have been working on that for some time in Italy. So we are going we're looking at back-end merges in Italy in the market because of the market share we have. We cannot sell digital and linear TV together. So that's a bit unfortunate, but hopefully there will be evolutions on the regulatory side, since we have the Googles and the Facebook doing everything. So we're working on the back end of joining them. And we've also worked with the Italian JIC for TV, Auditel, so that they are looking at a cross-platform video measurement. It's called Auditel 2.0, that's aimed at measuring total video. So they are already done the first kind of measurement. The second step that's going to be automated in one year and a half is going to be to deduplicate heads based on a panel, and so that we could sell our inventory across any device. And that's, effectively, that's also what the consumers are starting to do. They think of the content, they're not necessarily connected to the platform they're watching the content in, or, advertiser. They need to reach that consumer no matter what the platform, as long as it is effective. So absolutely, the total video landscape is there. And the other one is addressability. That's becoming more and more crucial. We are seeing it growing massively. So our connected TV, addressable TV offering is growing so much, despite of COVID, it's having exponential growth. It's really an offering that's interesting. It's worked out quite well with, lockdown, with regions starting at different speeds, and we're having more and more use for that. So I think I see these two strategic development for AVOD. And then the third one would be, it's if you want a sort of upweight, the closing the cycle with the consumer, leveraging on these huge customer base, if you want, viewer space that we have, we can use it to upsell and maybe sell them our spot service and create a more seamless customer journey between, the AVOD piece and the spot piece.
That's a really interesting summary of the priorities. So integration, addressability, and then upselling and cross-selling more effectively. Bill, does that make sense to you as a strategy for growing AVOD revenues? If your CEO came to you and said, Bill, we're going to double down on these 3, would you be broadly happy?
I think we're highly sympathetic to any organisation that says we want to have as much flexibility in terms of how we monetize our rights or the content we own and create, and how we engage the audience for the reasons I gave you. I think the reality is I am a little confused when you talk to the media business. They tend to blow hot and cold on advertising. You don't have to go back very far to hear major, senior executives in broadcaster companies talking about how they want to diversify their revenues. They want to look for other lines of business. They want to move away from an over-reliance on the ad business, which is highly cyclical, which can be very volatile, as you saw this year with COVID-19 and the impact that's had on the ad business, and which they have very limited control over, where in most markets they're regulated in terms of how much inventory they have and they can sell. So I hear what you're saying. I think our view from many of the clients we work with, like NBC in the UAE or even Formula One, is they want to draw the consumer through a funnel where they can start off registering them so they're a user, they have an identity, they have a profile, they can start learning about that user, and that user may just spend time with their brands on a free ad-funded basis. But the more insight you can gather, coming back to my earlier point about being a data-driven, customer-centric organization, is that broadcasters then have a platform where they can start learning about that consumer in terms of creating more personalized experiences, for example, but also start thinking, well, what sort of relationship could this consumer have with us? Is it always going to be free and ad funded? Or might I be able to introduce them to paid for products, or in other forms of a transactional relationship? So you start from there. We will work with clients that want to introduce an ad funded business into their offerings. We'll work with a Yospace or the ad decisioning and ad insertion businesses typically to do that. But our focus is helping our clients build out that sort of deep profile around the consumer or the audience member, and then start learning from that as to what sort of relationship that person wants to have with them over time and build that long-term loyalty. So,
Stefan, my guess is that you would agree violently with everything that Bill and Paola have said, that the priority for growing AVOD revenues is integration of previously disparate pools of inventory, its addressability, its upselling, and an insane focus on the customer experience and the customer journey. Do you agree?
Of course. Yes, of course. I'm a peaceful guy. No worry.
In that case, I'm glad to hear it. Let's talk a bit about Corona, because you mentioned some really interesting stats earlier. But there's obviously a huge amount of talk at the moment about the spike in in-home viewing, and a lot of that is going to broadcast AVOD services. But at the same time, consumers are trying out new things. There's a lot of talk about the growth of streaming services, for example. What do you think viewing is going to look like when we come out of Corona? And what does that mean for AVOD services?
So I do not have, of course, a crystal ball. What we have noticed so far is in the linear services, of course, there's been a huge increase of the daily viewing that I mentioned earlier. What is interesting to see is who are those people who came back to linear traditional TV. And surprisingly, it's the light viewers and the youngsters. So the youngsters, they rediscovered the good old TV set to get the information from, because I think also this generation is getting a bit more critical about what's going on, online, which is for good reason or not good reason, maybe less, I would say, how do you say that, legiferated? You say that in English? With, you have less restrictions, so you need to make your own opinion, whether it's fake news or not. And I guess that TV has really this disadvantage. What we provide in terms of news and information and entertainment, it's really high quality, premium, and definitely done by journalists when it comes to news. So no fake news. So we think that, of course, there will be a slowdown coming back. We already notice it from the different lockdown exit strategy that came around Europe. As soon as people are allowed to go outside, then you see the ratings going down. It was extremely nice weather as well. So, but we feel that we're going to keep a chunk of it. So this is good, and this is our challenge. What we see is on the online side, we will continue to grow. This is really what we think, because people have had the possibility to discover what we can propose them. So it's not only reruns or VOD, it's also originals that we are creating. Yes, there is this issue at the moment with the production, but I can tell you, from a production perspective, to answer Bill, we have some ideas, and honestly, we put it in place already. If you look at the show that we produce through Fremantle, like American Idol, we've been able to continue to produce American Idol in the US from a garage, from the host. So a different light, a lot lighter way of producing, using the different digital capacities of webcams, etc., that are around. In Belgium, we have a daily show that we call 71. It's a little bit of show like All Against Others, like a big wall, and people are participating. We just introduce an interactive show only online, and people are logging in through their webcams and are participating live to the show. This is now possible. A few years ago, we tested it. It was not so successful due to the internet, but now, thanks to broadband, I think we can imagine so many things for the future in terms of interactions.
So I think you're saying that post-corona, we will see a continued resurgence in consumption of TV. It will clearly decline a bit as people leave home and come out of lockdown, but we should see some experimentation in terms of new formats. Yes. Let's turn and talk a bit about SVOD, because we've got just under 10 minutes left, and it's the other core pillar of digital revenues. Bill, how many European broadcasters do you think in 2025 will have 5 million or more paying SVOD subscribers?
I always like this, John. You always do this at conferences. It's get the crystal ball out and start. Everyone has a punt. I'm troubled at the sort of conflicting messages we hear from the broadcast at the moment. I think
about SVOD.
Less than half a dozen, really. I think the difficulty that actually Stefan pointed out, there's a growing awareness that we've got to do something. And perhaps coming a little bit late, a lot of organizations are starting to team up and form joint ventures. So that's a good sign. It's perhaps realizing that together they're stronger. So I think that could actually be interesting, because a service like Salto, for example, or Join and others are really going to start creating a sort of more critical mass in terms of a destination for the consumer to enjoy. How you carve up who owns those customers between the different broadcaster partners is a bit more challenging, but that is certainly going to, maybe it's a little bit late, but some of those organizations are coming back with something which we hadn't really seen 2 or 3 years ago. I think the more important topic is going forward. COVID, we talked about this just a moment ago, has changed a lot of people's behavior, whether it's being forced to work from home and discovering they quite like it, and their employers quite like it too, through to people taking up online shopping, which they maybe not have done so much before, through to consuming entertainment. Even using Zoom or Teams or whatever we're using today, it illustrates that people can be highly adaptable when the situation demands it. What will be interesting to see is how much of that behavior goes back to what the normal before COVID, and how much is more permanent. And the competition, I think, is only going to intensify for those businesses that perhaps have seen an uplift in subscription numbers, SVOD services, for example, over the last few months, and are now starting to figure out, well, how do we keep the customers we've acquired in rather unusual circumstances?
Okay. Paula, what's your view on the SVOD opportunity for Europe's broadcasters? Are you betting the house on a huge uptick in SVOD revenues at Mediaset?
I wouldn't say. It's one. How do you say?
I should say betting the Roman villa, of course, but
no, it's another way of interacting with the consumer and differentiating the business. Whether it's successful or not, we've seen very encouraging signs. Of course, we have this opportunity. Why not? So we are in this and we are experimenting. We see, I think the spot system will also develop there are already several models in the market, whether you might be more of a distribution platform or you're more a content owner, having your own program. So it's a whole new world to explore, and it makes sense for us to do, since we have the viewer relationship, we have the data on what these viewers like to watch, and so for us it's easy to customize an offering for them, and we also have our own production. So why not? Would that be a game changing? Probably not, but it's definitely adding more richness, and also gives us the opportunity to experiment, to tap into different content as well. So I think it's a very sensible and a strategic thing to do.
There's been a lot of talk at the moment, of course, about hybrid models. So an AVOD layer, an AVOD plus an ad light subscription layer, and then a no ads all SVOD layer, a bit like Peacock or Hulu and so on. Do you think these models will work with consumers?
I think they need to be dynamic. So we've done lots of studies. So with our data scientist team, so we have segmented all our audience of our OTT, and we have looked, what the tolerance, because of ADV advertising they had, and I think is something that's so dynamic. It can change month by month, literally. So I think it's worth having all the levers ready, and then you have to be very fluid and adapt with time.
Okay, Stefan, do you think the sort of AVOD plus SVOD combinations are going to work with European TV audiences?
Yeah, we certainly believe there will be different models to address different needs and different capabilities as well. Don't forget that people do not have unlimited budgets ahead of them. If you look at the US, the most advanced market, I think they already pay quite heavy amount to get access to TV, something around $100 and $120 a month. I'm sorry. So meaning that even if you take 3 subscription, Netflix, Amazon, and another one, Hulu, for instance, it's still cheaper than what you pay for TV. In Europe, I think it's a bit different. There will be, of course, multiple subscription, and but there will be also a certain level that people will not take. So they will not take 10 different offers at a time, I don't think, or maybe a few of them. So we need to address all of them. We need to address the one who are really seeking, oh, I want my program and I don't want to be bothered by ads. That's clear. And I can afford to pay. Okay, no problem. We can also address those ones. That's pure SVOD model. We need to address, on the contrary, the other side of the spectrum, the one who feel that, no, they want to access, but they are happy to be interrupted, like they've been interrupted for the last 50 years with the TV offering, or traditional TV offering. So that's the pure AVOD model. And we also saw that from the US, Hulu type of approaches, hybrid model, different tiers, low subscription level, less ad loads. You can combine this with another subscription like Spotify, whatever. Makes sense also to a part of the population. It also leads us to potential global agreements with telcos that we can imagine in the different countries in order to provide the best and the most accurate product to the consumers. Our aim is to be able to satisfy the different spectrum of consumers, to be agile, to be flexible, and to be reactive. That's what we are planning to do. You were mentioning 5 million subscribers. This is the aim of RTL Group within the next few years, to reach between 5 and 7 million subs in terms of SVOD offers across our offering, and we will do whatever it takes to achieve it, and hopefully we will. But of course, it's a long run, and you need to have also a very clear strategic vision about content, what you want to put, and how much you want to spend for it.
Okay, we are just about out of time, I'm afraid. So we have time for one very quick final question, a couple of sentences only from each of you. Bill, I'll start with you. Give us some thoughts on the priorities ahead. So if you were running a big broadcast business in Europe today, the single most important thing that you want to get right during the next 12 to 18 months to grow your digital business would be what? What do you think is the big thing that's got to happen?
I think you've really got to sort of assume that COVID and the pandemic and all the impacts that has created a great learning opportunity. It's helped a lot of companies understand their consumers better, or should have. And it also means they've got to be able to react very quickly for when things start moving back to whatever the new normal will look like in the months ahead. Our view is start thinking quickly about how you can adapt your service to suit the times. We're working with companies that want to be able to gift their access to their service, for example, because they know that consumers want to treat one another, or businesses want to treat their employees through gifting entertainment. You have to be able to work with tools that allow you to switch those types of features on and off incredibly quickly if you're going to seize those sort of opportunities with the level of speed required. So our view is look to become agile, more responsive, data-driven, customer-centric, and move away from assuming that the only answer to do that is to build technology. Stefan made a great comment about getting together to build common platforms. We've got 25 clients using a common platform called Ascendon, offered on the SaaS model, and that's working.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Stefan, the big priority for the next 12 to 18 months?
Well, the biggest priorities for us is we need to simplify this super complex ecosystem. So simplify the access to our inventory. This is what we do with VMP Connect or with dForce in Germany, or single DSP access to online video and ATV. We want, I think from a tech perspective, I think it would be good to be more in charge of our own highway. We need to build our own highways, meaning our own access to our inventory. We cannot do that on our own as a single broadcaster. It needs to be an alliance with different broadcasters in Europe, but there is still time to do it. And maybe the third part is about VOD as a whole, premium content VOD platform, and then test whether it's AVOD, SVOD, hybrid. So we'll see.
And Paola, a final word from you. The big priorities ahead as you see them during the next 12 to 18 months.
So that's definitely for us, it's total video. We are just launched during the COVID times, so we're going to progress with that. And that also comes with a measurement, because of course you need that clarified, across media if you want to launch total video. And then I would agree with what Stefan said, the flexibility, because we are in, times where things change extremely quickly. Consumers adapt to everything very quickly. And so we have to build a flexible structure to adapt.
Paola, thank you so much. And a thank you to all of our panel for sharing some of your thoughts. Long live the Empire. And good luck in the coming months. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefan.
Thank you all. Thank you, Paola.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Bill.